The emergency klaxons blared across the United Nations Space Command, UNSC, headquarters as 5 brunally females plummeted towards Earth in their disabled starship. Lieutenant Aaron Porter's heart raced as he sprinted to the briefing room, knowing these aliens had arrived at the peak of their mating season. The ship's impact in the Mojave Desert sent shockwaves through the region, carving out a half-mile-wide crater in the barren landscape. Porter's team, the first response unit, sped towards the crash site in their armored vehicles. The desert air shimmered with heat as they approached, their sensors detecting unusual pheromone levels emanating from the wreckage. "All units, be advised," crackled the voice of UNSC command over the comms. "Aliens identified as Brunali, species known for intense mating cycles occurring once every 50 years. Extreme caution advised." Porter's grip tightened on his rifle as he observed 5 humanoid figures emerging from the twisted metal of their ship. Each alien female displayed signs of physical distress, their bodies radiating powerful biochemical signatures that made his skin tingle even from a distance. "Lieutenant," warned Dr. Eliza Chen, the team's xenobiologist, her voice tense, "those pheromones could pose severe risk to human physiology. Maintain distance." But orders were orders. Porter received the command to establish first contact and assess the situation. He took a deep breath, steeling himself as he stepped forward, his team fanning out behind him with weapons at the ready. One of the Brunali, her skin a pale lavender and eyes glowing with an otherworldly intensity, locked gazes with Porter. She began moving towards him with clear intent, her movements graceful despite her apparent distress. Porter's heart pounded in his chest. Every instinct screamed at him to retreat, to maintain protocol and keep his distance. But as the Brunali approached, her biochemical influence grew stronger with each step. He found himself rooted to the spot, caught between duty and an inexplicable pull towards the alien female. "Lieutenant Porter," barked his second-in-command. "Orders?" In that moment, as Porter stood at the precipice of first contact, news of the alien arrival exploded across global media. Panic spread like wildfire, governments scrambling to formulate responses. Humanity teetered on the edge of a new era, torn between fear of the unknown and the potential for a cosmic connection. The Brunali, later identified as Bryn, was now mere steps away from Porter. Her alien features softened, a look of desperation and need clear in her otherworldly eyes. Porter's mind raced, weighing the risks of closer contact against the potential diplomatic consequences of rejection. With the world watching and the fate of 2 species hanging in the balance, Lieutenant Aaron Porter faced the most crucial decision of his life. Follow protocol and maintain distance, potentially alienating these mysterious visitors, or risk it all on a chance at understanding, at connection, at something that could change the course of human history forever. The desert wind whipped around them as Porter made his choice, the consequences of which would ripple across the stars. Porter's decision crystallized in an instant. Protocol be damned. He had to engage. With a deep breath, he stepped forward, closing the gap between himself and the approaching Brunali female. "Lieutenant Porter, stand down!" his second-in-command shouted, but the words barely registered. As Porter moved closer, the alien pheromones intensified, flooding his senses. His heart raced, pupils dilated, and a rush of adrenaline surged through his body. Every step brought a new wave of biochemical influence, clouding his judgment and heightening his awareness of the alien before him. Bryn, the lavender-skinned Brunali, met him halfway. Up close, Porter could see the desperation in her glowing eyes, the slight tremor in her graceful movements. She began gesturing frantically, her melodic voice producing sounds unlike anything Porter had ever heard. Fumbling with his gear, Porter activated his universal translator. The device crackled to life, struggling to process the alien language. "Need help," the translator sputtered. "Cycle critical." Porter's mind reeled as he tried to make sense of the fragmented communication. "What cycle? What do you need?" Bryn's response came in a flurry of words and gestures, only partially deciphered by the translator. "Mating, emergency, systems failure." The realization hit Porter like a physical blow. The crash had disrupted their ability to regulate their mating cycle. These aliens weren't just in distress. They were in the throes of a biological crisis. Behind him, Porter vaguely registered the voices of his team, their tones urgent and concerned. But his focus remained locked on Bryn, her alien features softening as she recognized his attempt to understand. "Lieutenant Porter," Dr. Chen's voice cut through his comm link. "Your vitals are spiking. The pheromone levels are off the charts. You need to fall back immediately." Porter opened his mouth to respond, but the words caught in his throat. His body felt electric, every nerve ending alive with sensation. He knew he should retreat, should follow protocol, but the pull towards Bryn was overwhelming. The other 4 Brunali females, sensing the connection between Porter and Bryn, began to approach. Their collective presence amplified the pheromone-laden air, creating a potent cocktail of alien biochemistry that pushed Porter's physiology to its limits. "All units, fall back." The order came through, clear and sharp. "Maintain perimeter at a safe distance. Specialized containment unit en route." Porter's team reluctantly retreated, forming a wide circle around the impact crater. Their weapons remained trained on the group, fingers hovering near triggers as they watched their lieutenant standing alone among the aliens. In the distance, the low thrum of approaching vehicles signaled the arrival of reinforcements. Captain Marcus Chen's specialized containment unit sped across the desert, kicking up clouds of dust in their wake. As the situation at the crash site intensified, the world beyond erupted into chaos. News of the alien arrival spread like wildfire across global media networks. Speculation ran rampant, with theories ranging from invasion scenarios to divine visitation. Governments scrambled to formulate responses, military forces went on high alert, and civilians alternated between panic and fascination. Back in the crater, Porter's communication with Bryn became more coherent as the translator adapted to the Brunali language. "Our ship malfunction," Bryn explained, her alien features contorting with what Porter interpreted as pain or discomfort. "Emergency landing, no choice. Our medical systems also failed." Porter nodded, fighting through the fog of pheromones to focus on her words. "The systems that regulate your mating cycle?" "Yes," Bryn confirmed. "Long space travel. Requires careful balance. Now, cycle out of control. Need help. Urgently." The gravity of the situation settled over Porter. These weren't invaders or threats. They were explorers in dire need of assistance. But as he opened his mouth to reassure Bryn, a new voice boomed across the crater. "Lieutenant Porter!" Captain Chen's amplified voice rang out. "Step away from the aliens immediately. This is a direct order." Porter turned to see Chen's team approaching, their advanced protective gear a stark contrast to his own standard-issue uniform. The specialized unit moved with purpose, clearly intent on containing both Porter and the Brunali. In that moment, Porter found himself at the center of a tense standoff. To one side, Bryn and her 4 companions, their alien biology pushing them, and him, to the brink. To the other, the combined forces of his own team and Chen's containment unit, weapons at the ready. Porter's mind raced, knowing his next action could determine the course of this unprecedented encounter. The fate of 2 species hung in the balance, with Porter caught in the middle, his judgment clouded by an alien biochemistry he couldn't fully comprehend. As Captain Chen's team closed in, Porter made eye contact with Bryn one last time. In her otherworldly gaze, he saw fear, hope, and a desperate plea for understanding. The choice before him was clear: follow orders and potentially shatter this fragile first contact, or trust his instincts and risk everything on the chance for a deeper connection. With the world watching and the desert wind whipping around them, Lieutenant Aaron Porter prepared to make a decision that would echo across the stars. Porter's world narrowed to a pinpoint, his senses overwhelmed by the alien presence before him. The approaching rumble of vehicles barely registered as he struggled to maintain his composure. Suddenly, a booming voice cut through the haze. "Lieutenant Porter, step away from the aliens immediately. This is a direct order." The familiar tone of Captain Marcus Chen snapped Porter back to reality. He turned to see Chen's specialized containment unit rolling into view, their advanced protective gear a stark contrast to his own standard-issue uniform. The team moved with purpose, clearly intent on containing both Porter and the Brunali. As Chen's unit approached, Bryn's demeanor shifted. She moved closer to Porter, her body language protective. The other 4 Brunali females quickly followed suit, forming a defensive circle around them. Porter felt the air grow thick with pheromones, his heart racing as he realized the aliens were entering a more intense phase of their mating cycle. "Captain Chen," Porter called out, his voice strained. "Wait, they're not hostile. They need our help." Chen's team halted their advance, weapons trained on the group. "Lieutenant, you're compromised. We need to get you out of there now." Porter opened his mouth to argue, but a wave of dizziness washed over him. He stumbled, and Bryn caught his arm, steadying him. The touch sent shockwaves through his system, intensifying the pheromones' effect. "Deploying atmospheric regulators," Chen announced. His team quickly set up a series of devices around the perimeter of the crash site. Within moments, Porter felt a shift in the air. His mind began to clear as the pheromone concentration decreased. What's happening?" he muttered, blinking rapidly as his senses returned to normal. Chen's voice came through clearer now. "We're normalizing the air composition, Porter. Dr. Rodriguez's orders. How are you feeling?" "Better," Porter admitted, though his body still thrummed with residual energy. He turned to Bryn, whose features were contorted in discomfort. "But they're getting worse." Using his now-functioning translator, Porter relayed Bryn's desperate message. "They need immediate medical assistance. Without treatment or completing their cycle, they're facing organ failure." Chen cursed under his breath, conferring with someone over his comlink. After a tense moment, he addressed Porter. "Our tech can't help them. Their biology is too different." The implications hung heavy in the air. Porter looked from Chen to Bryn, then back to his commanding officer. "So what do we do?" Before Chen could respond, alarms blared from the surrounding vehicles. "Sir," one of Chen's team called out, "pheromone levels are spiking again. The regulators can't keep up." Porter watched in horror as several UNSC personnel began showing signs of the pheromones' influence. Their movements became erratic, eyes dilating as they struggled to maintain their positions. "Expand the perimeter," Chen barked. "Get those affected out of range. Now!" As chaos erupted around them, a new sound cut through the commotion. A low hum emanated from the crashed Brunali ship, drawing all eyes to its twisted frame. "Impossible," Bryn whispered, her translator struggling to keep up. "The emergency systems—" A holographic projection flickered to life above the wreckage. The image stabilized, revealing a scene of devastation on an alien world. A recorded voice, tinged with desperation, filled the air. "This is the final transmission of the Brunali High Council. Our world faces extinction. The fading plague has decimated our population's fertility. These 5 carry our last hope for survival. To any who receive this message, we beg for your aid. The fate of our entire species rests in your hands." The message cut out, leaving a stunned silence in its wake. Porter turned to Bryn, seeing the weight of her mission reflected in her glowing eyes. Chen's voice, uncharacteristically quiet, broke the silence. "UNSC Command needs to know about this immediately." As the implications of the message sank in, Porter found himself at the center of a situation far more complex than he could have imagined. The health of the Brunali females, the potential threat to human personnel, and now the fate of an entire alien species, all hung in the balance. With the quarantine zone expanding and global attention intensifying, Porter knew that every decision made in the coming hours would have far-reaching consequences. He looked at Bryn, then at Chen, acutely aware of his unique position as a bridge between two worlds. "Captain," Porter said, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. "What are your orders?" "Captain," Porter said, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. "What are your orders?" Chen's eyes darted between Porter and the Brunali, his jaw clenching as he weighed his options. After a moment of tense silence, he spoke. "We need to contain this situation and report to UNSC Command immediately. But first, we need to stabilize these aliens." Porter nodded, relief flooding through him. He turned to Bryn, who was watching the exchange with anxious anticipation. "We're going to help you," he assured her, his translator conveying the message. Over the next few hours, a flurry of activity engulfed the crash site. As news of the alien arrival spread across the globe, Porter found himself at the center of a rapidly unfolding crisis. UNSC Command, after lengthy deliberations, made a controversial decision. They would offer limited assistance to the Brunali, with Porter as the primary liaison. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the UNSC's leading xenobiologist, arrived on the scene with a team of specialists. She quickly set up a makeshift medical facility near the crash site, which would later be dubbed the First Contact Center, or FCC. Lieutenant Porter, Dr. Rodriguez addressed him, her eyes sharp behind protective goggles. We need you to volunteer for a rather unconventional mission. Porter listened intently as she outlined the plan. Given his unique position as the first human to establish meaningful contact with the Brunali, he would play a pivotal role in their care and communication. The risks were significant and largely unknown, but the potential to save an entire alien species hung in the balance. I'll do it, Porter said without hesitation, his gaze drifting to Bryn and her companions. Dr. Rodriguez nodded, her expression a mix of admiration and concern. We'll begin with intensive briefings on Brunali biology and establish a rigorous health monitoring protocol for you. As Porter underwent a battery of tests and briefings, the world beyond the FCC erupted into chaos. Protests broke out in major cities worldwide, with factions forming both for and against assisting the aliens. The United Nations convened an emergency session, debating the ethical and practical implications of this unprecedented first contact. Inside the FCC, Porter's days became a blur of medical examinations, language lessons, and cultural exchange sessions with Bryn. As they spent more time together, Porter found himself increasingly attuned to the nuances of Brunali communication and behavior. Your people, Bryn said one day, her melodic voice tinged with curiosity. They fear us? Porter chose his words carefully. Some do. It's natural to fear the unknown, but many are excited to learn about you and your world. As they conversed, Porter noticed subtle changes in his own physiology. His senses seemed sharper, his reflexes quicker. Dr. Rodriguez and her team monitored these changes closely, documenting every alteration in his biochemistry. Meanwhile, the other 4 Brunali females, Lyra, Vela, Karina, and Mira, were moved to separate quarantine units within the FCC. Their conditions varied, with some showing more severe symptoms of their disrupted mating cycle than others. The situation grew more complex when a small group of volunteers approached the UNSC, offering to assist the Brunali in a manner similar to Porter. After rigorous screening, 3 men were selected: Jason Chen, a xenobiologist, Michael Okonkwo, a linguist, and David Petrov, a psychologist. Porter watched as each volunteer was paired with one of the remaining Brunali females, mirroring his own interaction with Bryn. The FCC became a hive of activity, with each human Brunali pair working to bridge the gap between their species. As days turned into weeks, Porter's connection with Bryn deepened. They shared stories of their respective worlds, finding surprising commonalities amid the vast differences. One evening, as they watched the sunset from a specially designed observation deck, Bryn turned to Porter, her luminescent eyes reflecting the fading light. Aaron, she said, using his first name for the first time, I fear we may be running out of time. Our bodies, the cycle grows stronger. Porter felt a surge of protectiveness mixed with an unfamiliar longing. He placed a hand on her shoulder, marveling at the alien texture of her skin. We'll find a solution, Bryn. I promise. Unbeknownst to Porter and the rest of the FCC staff, the prolonged exposure to Brunali biology was having subtle effects on the humans. Dr. Rodriguez, normally cool and collected, found herself experiencing moments of heightened emotional sensitivity. Other staff members reported increased sensory awareness and vivid dreams. As night fell over the FCC, Porter lay in his bunk, his mind racing with the events of the past weeks. The fate of the Brunali species hung in the balance, and he knew that the coming days would be crucial. With the world watching and the unknown stretching before them, Porter closed his eyes, ready to face whatever challenges the dawn would bring. The weight of responsibility settled over him like a heavy blanket as he drifted off to sleep. Porter woke with a start, his senses unusually sharp. The room came into focus with startling clarity, and he could hear the faint hum of equipment several rooms away. Frowning, he sat up and noticed his skin tingling with an unfamiliar energy. As he made his way to the medical wing for his daily checkup, he overheard Dr. Rodriguez speaking in hushed tones with one of her colleagues. "The cellular changes are unprecedented," she whispered, her voice a mix of awe and concern. "It's as if his body is adapting to the Brunali biology at an accelerated rate." Porter cleared his throat as he entered the room, causing both scientists to jump. Dr. Rodriguez quickly composed herself and gestured for him to take a seat. "Lieutenant, we've noticed some interesting developments in your latest test results," she began, her eyes scanning a holographic display of Porter's biometrics. "Your hormone levels have shifted dramatically, and your cellular structure is showing signs of increased resilience." Porter nodded, unsurprised. "I've been feeling different, stronger, more aware. What does this mean?" Before Dr. Rodriguez could answer, an alarm blared through the facility. Captain Chen's voice crackled over the intercom. "All personnel to their stations. We have a situation developing in the Brunali quarters." Porter sprinted toward Bryn's room, his enhanced physiology allowing him to move with unprecedented speed and agility. He arrived to find Bryn writhing on her bed, her skin pulsing with an otherworldly glow. "Aaron," she gasped, her eyes locking onto his. "The cycle, it's reaching its peak." As Porter approached, he felt a wave of energy wash over him. The air grew thick with pheromones, more potent than anything he'd experienced before. He struggled to maintain his composure as his body responded to Bryn's presence. Dr. Rodriguez burst into the room, her eyes widening as she took in the scene. "Lieutenant, step back. We need to contain this." Her words were cut short as the facility's systems suddenly flickered. The holographic displays in the room came to life, projecting a complex array of genetic information. "The ship," Bryn whispered, her voice filled with wonder. "It's activating the archive." As Porter and Dr. Rodriguez watched in amazement, the genetic data began to unfold before them, revealing secrets of Brunali biology that had remained hidden until now. In the adjoining rooms, similar scenes were unfolding. Jason Chen, Michael Okonkwo, and David Petroff found themselves drawn to their Brunali partners, their bodies resonating with the alien energy that filled the air. Dr. Rodriguez tapped furiously at her comm device. "We need a full lockdown of the FCC, now!" As the facility went into containment mode, Porter felt a strange sensation building within him. He looked at Bryn, seeing his own confusion mirrored in her luminescent eyes. "What's happening to us?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Bryn reached out, her fingers intertwining with his. The moment they touched, a surge of energy pulsed between them. Porter gasped as images flooded his mind. Glimpses of an alien world, the devastating plague that had brought the Brunali to Earth, and the desperate hope that drove their mission. "We're bonding," Bryn explained, her voice filled with a mixture of fear and excitement. "Our biologies are merging in ways I never thought possible." Dr. Rodriguez watched the exchange with a mix of scientific fascination and growing alarm. "This is unprecedented," she muttered, her sensors capturing every detail of the biochemical changes occurring in both Porter and Bryn. Suddenly, the facility's security systems blared to life. Captain Chen's voice cut through the chaos. "Intruder alert! All personnel to battle stations! This is not a drill!" Porter's newly heightened senses picked up the sound of gunfire in the distance. He looked at Bryn, then at Dr. Rodriguez, torn between his duty to defend the facility and his instinct to protect his Brunali partner. "Go!" Bryn urged him, sensing his conflict. "I'll be safe here." With a nod, Porter sprinted out of the room, his enhanced body moving with fluid grace. As he raced toward the source of the disturbance, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a much larger transformation, one that would reshape not just his life, but the future of human-alien relations on Earth. The sounds of combat grew louder as Porter approached the facility's main entrance. He rounded a corner to find Captain Chen and a squad of UNSC soldiers engaged in a firefight with a group of heavily armed intruders. "Porter!" Chen shouted, ducking behind a barricade. "We've got a situation here." As Porter took cover, he realized that his heightened senses were giving him an unexpected advantage. He could predict the intruders' movements with uncanny accuracy, anticipating their attacks before they happened. They're after the Brunali tech, Chen explained between bursts of gunfire. We can't let them breach the inner chambers. Porter nodded, his mind racing. He knew that the secrets locked within the Brunali genetic database could change everything, for better or worse. As he prepared to join the fight, he couldn't help but wonder how this clash would shape the delicate balance between human and Brunali interests, and what further challenges lay ahead in this unprecedented interspecies alliance. Encounter. As Porter moved to join the fray, a sudden wave of dizziness washed over him. He stumbled, catching himself against the wall as images flashed through his mind. Alien landscapes, unfamiliar technology, and faces he'd never seen before. "Lieutenant, are you all right?" Chen's voice cut through the mental fog. Porter shook his head, clearing the visions. "I'm fine," he called back, steadying himself. He couldn't explain what had just happened, but there was no time to dwell on it now. Pushing aside his confusion, Porter focused on the intruders. With his enhanced reflexes, he moved with startling speed, disarming one attacker and using the man's own weapon to take down another. The remaining intruders, caught off guard by Porter's unexpected prowess, began to retreat. As the last of the attackers fled, Porter felt a presence in his mind. Bryn. Somehow he could sense her thoughts, her emotions. He turned to Chen, urgency in his voice. "Captain, we need to get back to the Brunali quarters. Something's happening." They raced through the facility, arriving to find Dr. Rodriguez and her team in a state of controlled chaos. The other human Brunali pairs were gathered in the central area, expressions of awe and confusion on their faces. "It's extraordinary," Dr. Rodriguez exclaimed as Porter entered. "The bond between humans and Brunali, it's evolving at an exponential rate. We're seeing the formation of a shared consciousness." Porter locked eyes with Bryn across the room, feeling the connection between them pulse with newfound strength. As he approached her, fragments of Brunali knowledge flooded his mind. Complex mathematical equations, star charts of distant systems, and glimpses of advanced biotechnology. "I can see your world," Porter whispered, taking Bryn's hand. "Your history, your science. It's all there, just out of reach." Bryn nodded, her luminescent eyes wide with wonder. "And I see yours. Your cities, your music, your art. It's beautiful." Dr. Rodriguez interrupted their moment, her voice tight with excitement. "Lieutenant, we've made a breakthrough. The Brunali genetic database, we've cracked it." She led Porter and Bryn to a holographic display where complex strands of DNA rotated slowly. "The plague on the Brunali homeworld. It's a retrovirus that targets reproductive cells. But here's the fascinating part. The cure might lie in combining human and Brunali DNA." As the implications of this discovery sank in, alarms blared through the facility once again. Security Chief Marcus Chen's voice came over the intercom, tension evident in his tone. "Dr. Rodriguez, we have a situation. Multiple systems are malfunctioning across the FCC. We suspect sabotage." Porter's enhanced senses picked up on subtle changes in the air circulation, the barely perceptible flicker of lights. "It's not just sabotage," he realized. "It's an infiltration." As if on cue, the main door to the Brunali quarters slid open, revealing a figure Porter had never seen before. The man strode in with confidence, his piercing gaze taking in the scene before him. "Dr. Victor Reeves," he announced, his voice carrying an air of authority. "I've been brought in to assist with the cure." Dr. Rodriguez's expression tightened. "We weren't informed of any new personnel, Dr. Reeves." "The situation has escalated beyond your clearance level, I'm afraid," Reeves replied smoothly. "Now, if you'll bring me up to speed on your findings?" As Rodriguez reluctantly began to brief Reeves, Porter felt a wave of unease wash over him. Something about the new arrival set his heightened instincts on edge. Before he could voice his concerns, Bryn suddenly doubled over, gasping in pain. The other Brunali females showed similar signs of distress, their bodies pulsing with an otherworldly glow. "What's happening?" Porter demanded, supporting Bryn as she struggled to stand. Dr. Rodriguez rushed to examine the Brunali, her eyes widening as she interpreted the readings on her handheld scanner. "This is impossible," she breathed. "They're pregnant." The room fell silent as the weight of this revelation settled over everyone present. Dr. Reeves was the first to break the silence, a calculating gleam in his eye. "Fascinating," he murmured. "It seems our two species are more compatible than we thought." As Porter looked from Bryn to the other human-Brunali pairs, he realized that they stood at the precipice of a new era in human-alien relations. The implications of this development would reshape not just their lives, but the future of both their species. Outside the FCC, unbeknownst to those within, crowds had begun to gather. News of the Brunali presence had leaked, and the world was divided in its response. As night fell, the glow of protest signs and the chants of both supporters and detractors filled the air, a stark reminder of the challenges that lay ahead. Inside the facility, Porter held Bryn close, their shared consciousness allowing him to feel the mixture of fear and hope that coursed through her. As Dr. Reeves and Dr. Rodriguez argued over the ethical implications of their discovery, Porter knew that the real battle was just beginning. The fate of two worlds now rested in their hands, and the choices they made in the coming days would echo across the stars. Porter's words hung in the air, the weight of their implications settling over the room. Before anyone could respond, Bryn suddenly gasped, doubling over in pain. The other Brunali females followed suit, their bodies pulsing with an otherworldly glow. "Bryn!" Porter exclaimed, supporting her as she struggled to remain upright. "What's happening?" Dr. Rodriguez rushed to examine the Brunali, her eyes widening as she interpreted the readings on her handheld scanner. "This is impossible," she breathed. "They're pregnant." The room fell silent as the revelation sank in. Dr. Reeves was the first to break the silence, a calculating gleam in his eye. "Fascinating," he murmured. "It seems our two species are more compatible than we thought." Over the next few weeks, the first contact center transformed into a hive of frantic activity. The Brunali pregnancies progressed at an alarming rate, with the females' abdomens swelling visibly day by day. Dr. Rodriguez and her team worked around the clock, monitoring the rapidly developing fetuses and struggling to keep up with the unprecedented changes in Brunali physiology. Porter found himself constantly at Bryn's side, their psychic connection intensifying with each passing day. Through their shared consciousness, he experienced fragments of her physical discomfort and emotional turmoil. "I can feel the child growing," Bryn whispered one night, her luminescent eyes fixed on the ceiling. "It's different from anything my people have experienced before." Porter squeezed her hand, feeling a mixture of awe and trepidation. "We'll get through this together," he assured her, even as his own doubts gnawed at him. As the pregnancies entered their critical stage, Dr. Reeves made a breakthrough. Working tirelessly in the lab, he developed a prototype vaccine using genetic material from the hybrid fetuses. "This could be the cure we've been searching for," Reeves announced to the assembled team, his eyes gleaming with excitement. "But we need to test it on living subjects." Dr. Rodriguez frowned, her brow furrowing with concern. "The only viable test subjects would be the pregnant Brunali. We can't risk endangering them or the fetuses." Before they could debate further, alarms blared throughout the facility. Security Chief Marcus Chen's voice crackled over the intercom, tight with urgency. "We've detected an unidentified object entering the solar system at high speed. All personnel to alert stations." The FCC erupted into chaos as staff scrambled to their positions. Porter felt a sudden surge of information flood his mind through his connection with Bryn. Images of a massive ship, far more advanced than anything humanity had ever seen, flashed before his eyes. "Wait!" he shouted, grabbing Dr. Rodriguez's arm as she rushed past. "It's not an attack. The ship, it's responding to the distress call from the Brunali AI." Porter's words reached the right ears, and within hours, Earth's defense forces stood down as the Brunali medical ship entered orbit. A delegation led by Chief Medical Officer Zara descended to the FCC, bringing with them technology that seemed to border on the miraculous. Zara, a tall Brunali with piercing silver eyes, wasted no time in assessing the situation. "Your hybrid children are unlike anything we've seen before," she announced after examining the pregnant females. "Their development is exponential. We must prepare for their arrival immediately." As if on cue, Bryn cried out in pain. Porter was at her side in an instant, feeling the contractions ripple through their shared consciousness. "It's time," Bryn gasped, her body glowing brighter than ever. The medical team sprang into action, with Dr. Rodriguez, Dr. Reeves, and Zara working in tandem to manage the unprecedented births. One by one, the hybrid children entered the world, their cries a mix of human and alien tones that sent shivers down the spines of all who heard them. Porter held his breath as Bryn gave the final push, and their child slipped into the world. The infant opened its eyes, revealing irises that swirled with an otherworldly light. To Porter's amazement, he felt the baby's consciousness brush against his mind, a tendril of pure thought and emotion. "They're extraordinary," Dr. Rodriguez whispered, her scientific detachment momentarily forgotten as she cradled one of the newborns. The infants were already showing signs of rapid growth and cognitive development, their bodies a perfect blend of human and Brunali traits. As the new parents marveled at their children, Dr. Reeves approached with a vial of glowing liquid. "The vaccine," he explained, his voice tight with anticipation. "We've refined it using data from the newborns. We're ready for the first trial." One of the Brunali females, her newborn nestled safely in its father's arms, stepped forward. "I volunteer," she said, her voice steady despite the fear evident in her eyes. As Dr. Reeves prepared the injection, Porter felt a surge of hope and trepidation course through him. He looked down at his child, then at Bryn, marveling at the journey that had brought them to this moment. Whatever the future held, he knew that the birth of these hybrid children marked the beginning of a new era for both humans and Brunali. Outside the FCC, the world held its breath, waiting to see what this unprecedented union of species would bring. As news of the birth spread, opinions shifted and tensions rose. The fate of two worlds hung in the balance, with the hybrid children at the center of it all. Porter cradled his child, feeling the infant's rapid heartbeat against his chest. He met Bryn's eyes, seeing his own mixture of wonder and uncertainty reflected there. As the vaccine was administered to the volunteer, Porter knew that they stood on the brink of a new chapter in the story of their two species, one that would reshape the very fabric of both their societies. As the vaccine was administered to the volunteer, a hush fell over the room. All eyes were fixed on the Brunali female, watching for any sign of change. Minutes ticked by, feeling like hours, until suddenly the volunteer's skin began to glow with a soft, pulsating light. Dr. Rodriguez rushed forward, scanner in hand. "Incredible," she breathed, studying the readings. "The vaccine is already showing signs of efficacy at the cellular level." The news spread quickly through the first contact center, igniting a spark of hope. But there was little time to celebrate, as the hybrid children demanded constant attention. Within days, the infants had grown at an astonishing rate, reaching milestones that would take human babies months to achieve. Porter watched in awe as his child, now the size of a toddler, took its first steps. The infant's eyes, still swirling with that otherworldly light, locked onto his with an intensity that took his breath away. Through their shared consciousness, Porter felt a surge of curiosity and wonder. "They're growing so fast," Bryn murmured, her voice a mixture of pride and concern. "Is this normal for human children?" Porter shook his head, still marveling at the sight. "Not even close. They're developing at an extraordinary rate." Dr. Rodriguez and her team worked around the clock, documenting every aspect of the hybrid's growth. The children's rapid development necessitated constant adjustments to their care protocols, keeping the entire medical staff on their toes. As the days passed, news of the vaccine's potential spread beyond the FCC. The Brunali medical ship in orbit became a hive of activity, with volunteers eager to participate in the next phase of trials. Porter found himself thrust into a new role, acting as a liaison between the human and Brunali medical teams. "Your unique perspective is invaluable, Lieutenant," Dr. Rodriguez explained as she handed him a data pad filled with complex medical jargon. "Your connection with Bryn allows you to bridge gaps that we might otherwise miss." Porter nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. As he made his way through the facility, he couldn't help but notice the strain on resources. The influx of Brunali visitors had stretched the FCC to its limits, and security personnel seemed to be everywhere, their expressions tense and alert. In the main laboratory, Dr. Reeves and Zara huddled over a holographic display, fine-tuning the vaccine formula. Porter approached, catching snippets of their conversation. "If we incorporate this sequence from the hybrid genome," Zara was saying, her silver eyes gleaming with excitement, "we could potentially increase the vaccine's efficacy by 37%. Dr. Reeves nodded, his fingers flying over the controls. "Agreed. Let's run another simulation and—" He was interrupted by an urgent call from the communication center. The room fell silent as a grim-faced technician relayed the message from the Brunali homeworld. The plague had reached a critical stage, with millions at risk of imminent reproductive failure. The news hit like a shockwave, galvanizing the entire FCC into action. Within hours, an emergency session of the United Nations Security Council was convened. Porter found himself in a secure briefing room, surrounded by holographic projections of world leaders engaged in heated debate. "We cannot risk Earth's security by sending our best scientists into unknown territory," one leader argued vehemently. "If we don't act now, we'll be responsible for the extinction of an entire species," countered another. The debate raged on, but eventually a decision was reached. A joint human Brunali mission to the Brunali homeworld was approved, with Earth's top scientists and medical professionals to be led by Dr. Rodriguez and Dr. Reeves. As preparations for the mission began in earnest, Porter felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. The opportunity to visit an alien world was beyond anything he had ever imagined, but the thought of leaving his rapidly growing child behind filled him with anguish. He wasn't alone in his conflicted feelings. Throughout the FCC, the human Brunali pairs grappled with the same dilemma. The mission required their participation, but it meant separating from their extraordinary children. In the midst of this emotional turmoil, Security Chief Marcus Chen uncovered a plot by extremist groups to sabotage the Brunali medical ship. Porter watched as Chen coordinated with Earth's space defense forces, his usually calm demeanor replaced by steadfast perseverance. "We've implemented enhanced security measures," Chen reported during a tense briefing. "The ship is safe for now, but we can't let our guard down." As the launch date approached, the hybrid children, now resembling pre-teens, began to exhibit abilities that blurred the lines between human and Brunali. Porter watched in amazement as his child effortlessly interfaced with both human and alien technology, solving complex problems with intuitive ease. "They're incredible," Dr. Rodriguez marveled, observing the children during a series of tests. But their abilities raised so many questions about the future. The final days before the mission were a whirlwind of activity. Porter found himself constantly moving between briefings, medical checks, and precious moments with Bryn and their child. The emotional toll was palpable, and he could see the strain on the faces of his fellow human Brunali pairs. On the eve of their departure, Porter stood in the observation deck, gazing at the stars that would soon be their destination. Bryn joined him, their hands intertwining as they shared a moment of quiet reflection. "Are we doing the right thing?" Porter asked softly, voicing the doubt that had been gnawing at him. Bryn's luminescent eyes met his, filled with a mixture of determination and fear. "We have to try," she replied, "for both our peoples." As they turned to leave, the lights in the observation deck flickered ominously. Porter's enhanced senses picked up on a subtle change in the air circulation, reminiscent of the day Dr. Reeves had first arrived. His muscles tensed, instincts on high alert. "Something's wrong," he muttered, reaching for his communicator. Before he could activate it, the entire facility plunged into darkness. Darkness. Emergency lights flickered to life, casting an eerie red glow throughout the facility. "Bryn, stay close," Porter whispered, his enhanced senses on high alert. He could hear the rapid heartbeats of nearby personnel, their fear palpable in the tense atmosphere. Before they could react further, the intercom crackled to life. "All personnel, this is Security Chief Chen. We have a situation. Proceed immediately to your designated emergency stations. This is not a drill." Porter and Bryn exchanged a worried glance before rushing towards the main control room. As they navigated the dimly lit corridors, they encountered groups of panicked staff members, some carrying equipment, others helping their Brunali counterparts. Upon reaching the control room, They found Dr. Rodriguez and Dr. Reeves huddled over a console, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of emergency screens. "What's happening?" Porter asked, his voice tight with concern. Dr. Rodriguez looked up, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and willpower. "We're not entirely sure, but it seems we've had a massive power failure. Chen suspects it might be sabotage." As if on cue, Chen burst into the room, his usually composed demeanor replaced by a look of grim willpower. "We've got multiple breaches in our security systems. I've initiated lockdown procedures, but we need to move fast. The mission launch is compromised." The room erupted into a flurry of activity as the team scrambled to salvage their plans. Porter felt a surge of adrenaline course through his body, his training kicking in as he moved to assist Chen in coordinating the security response. Amidst the chaos, Dr. Reeves approached with a datapad in hand. "We can't delay the mission. The Brunali homeworld is on the brink of collapse. We need to leave now, power failure or not." Chen shook his head, his expression resolute. "It's too risky. We don't know the full extent of the sabotage. The ship could be compromised." As the argument intensified, Porter felt a gentle touch on his arm. He turned to see Bryn, her luminescent eyes filled with a mixture of fear and purpose. "We have to go," she said softly. "Our people need us." Porter nodded, knowing she was right. He cleared his throat, drawing the attention of the room. "We don't have a choice. We need to launch now and deal with any issues en route. Every moment we delay puts more Brunali lives at risk." After a tense moment of silence, Dr. Rodriguez nodded. "Agreed, let's move." The next hour was a blur of frantic activity as the team prepared for an emergency launch. Porter worked alongside Chen to secure the ship and sweep for any signs of tampering. Meanwhile, Dr. Rodriguez and Dr. Reeves rushed to ensure all necessary equipment and supplies were on board. As the final preparations were made, Porter found himself standing before his child, now resembling a preteen. The hybrid's eyes swirled with that otherworldly light, seeming to understand the gravity of the situation. "I have to go," Porter said, his voice thick with emotion. "But I promise I'll come back." The child nodded, a wisdom beyond their years evident in their expression. "We'll be waiting," they replied, their voice a melodious blend of human and Brunali tones. With a heavy heart, Porter boarded the modified Brunali vessel alongside the rest of the mission team. As the ship's engines roared to life, he caught a final glimpse of the FCC through the viewport, the facility now a hive of activity as security teams worked to restore power and uncover the source of the sabotage. The ship shuddered as it broke free of Earth's atmosphere, the familiar blue of his home planet giving way to the vast expanse of space. Porter took a deep breath, steeling himself for the challenges ahead. No sooner had they cleared Earth's orbit than alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Dr. Reeves rushed to a nearby console, his fingers flying over the controls. "We've got multiple system failures," he announced, his voice tight with concern. "Environmental controls, navigation, propulsion, they're all going haywire." Porter felt a surge of panic threatening to overwhelm him, but he pushed it down, focusing on the task at hand. He moved to join Dr. Rodriguez and their Brunali counterparts, who were already working to stabilize the ship's systems. "It's the integration of our technologies," one of the Brunali engineers explained, his silver eyes reflecting the flickering emergency lights. "The sabotage must have affected the interfaces we designed to merge our systems." As they worked tirelessly to keep the ship functional, Porter couldn't help but marvel at the seamless cooperation between humans and Brunali. Despite their differences, they moved in perfect synchronization, each bringing their unique skills and perspectives to bear on the problem. Hours passed in a blur of frantic activity. Porter's enhanced connection with Bryn proved invaluable as they worked together to recalibrate the ship's navigation systems. Their shared consciousness allowed them to process vast amounts of data at an incredible speed, identifying and correcting errors that would have taken the others days to uncover. Just as they thought they had the situation under control, a new crisis emerged. The ship's environmental controls began to fluctuate wildly, threatening the delicate balance required to keep both human and Brunali crew members alive. Dr. Jason Chen, who had been monitoring the vaccine storage units, approached with a grim expression. "The environmental fluctuations are affecting the vaccine's stability," he reported. If we don't find a solution soon, we risk losing our entire supply. The news sent a shockwave through the crew. They had come too far and risked too much to fail now. As the team debated their options, Porter felt a sudden surge of inspiration through his link with Bryn. "Wait," he called out, drawing everyone's attention. "What if we use the hybrid children's genetic material to stabilize the vaccine? Their DNA is the perfect bridge between our species." The suggestion was met with a mix of hope and hesitation. Dr. Rodriguez frowned, considering the implications. "It's risky," she said slowly. "We haven't had time to fully study the long-term effects of the hybrid DNA. But it might be our only choice," Dr. Reeves countered, his eyes alight with the possibility. "If we don't act now, we'll lose everything." As the debate raged on, Porter felt the weight of their mission pressing down on him. They were carrying the hopes of two worlds, hurtling through space towards an uncertain future. And somewhere behind them, on a planet growing ever more distant, their extraordinary children were facing challenges of their own. The ship shuddered again, a stark reminder of the precarious nature of their journey. Porter took a deep breath, knowing that whatever decision they made would have far-reaching consequences for both humans and Brunali. As he looked around at the determined faces of his crewmates, he realized that their true test was only just beginning. As the ship hurtled through space, the crew knew their true test was only just beginning. The descent into the Brunali atmosphere was as turbulent as their journey through space. Warning alarms blared as the ship's hull groaned under the strain of re-entry. Porter gripped his seat, exchanging a worried glance with Bryn as Dr. Rodriguez called out readings from her console. "Atmospheric toxicity levels are off the charts," she shouted over the din. "Environmental systems are struggling to compensate." With a bone-jarring thud, the ship touched down on the outskirts of the Brunali capital. As the dust settled, Porter's enhanced senses picked up the acrid smell of pollutants seeping through the ship's compromised seals. "Protective suits now," Dr. Reeves ordered, already pulling on his own gear. The human crew members scrambled to don their suits, the Brunali watching with a mix of concern and curiosity. As the airlock hissed open, Porter stepped out first, his boots sinking slightly into the soft, ash-gray soil. The landscape before him was a far cry from the lush world Bryn had described in her stories. Industrial towers belched thick smoke into the sky, obscuring what little sunlight managed to penetrate the polluted atmosphere. "It's worse than we imagined," Bryn whispered, her luminescent eyes dimming with sadness as she surveyed her homeworld. The team worked quickly to unload their equipment, setting up a mobile lab in the shadow of their battered ship. Dr. Rodriguez and Dr. Reeves immediately began assessing the vaccine's stability, their faces grim behind their protective visors. "Porter, Bryn," Dr. Rodriguez called out, "we need you to scout ahead, make contact with the local authorities, and secure a route to the medical facility." Nodding, Porter and Bryn set out towards the city center, their enhanced connection allowing them to communicate silently as they navigated the chaotic streets. The closer they got to the city, the more desperate the situation became evident. Crowds of Brunali citizens, their silver skin mottled with the telltale lesions of the plague, pressed against hastily erected barriers. Security forces struggled to maintain order as medical personnel in sealed suits moved among the sick, offering what little comfort they could. "Help us!" a voice cried out in Brunali. Porter turned to see a mother clutching a child, its small body racked with violent coughs. The sight sent a pang through his heart as he thought of his own child back on Earth. Bryn stepped forward, her voice calm but firm as she addressed the crowd in their native tongue. "We bring hope from Earth. Please, remain calm and allow us to establish a distribution center. Everyone will receive help." As they pushed through the throng, Porter's enhanced hearing picked up snippets of conversation, whispers of government corruption, rumors of hoarded cures, and the growing desperation of a people on the brink of extinction. Finally, they reached the central administrative complex, a towering structure of gleaming metal and pulsing energy fields. High Counselor Thara, a stern-faced Brunali with eyes that seemed to glow with an inner fire, met them at the entrance. "You've arrived none too soon," she said, her voice tight with nearly unleashed emotion. "Follow me. We've prepared a secure facility for your team." As they walked, Thara briefed them on the current situation, her words painting a grim picture of a society teetering on the edge of collapse. Porter listened intently, filing away crucial information to relay back to the team. Meanwhile, back at the ship, Dr. Reeves cursed under his breath as he examined the latest test results. The atmospheric contaminants have affected the vaccine's stability, he reported to Dr. Rodriguez. We need to recalibrate the formula before we can begin distribution. Dr. Rodriguez nodded grimly, already reaching for her equipment. I'll contact Earth, see if we can get some input from the hybrid children. Their unique physiology might hold the key to stabilizing the vaccine in this environment. As the scientists worked feverishly to salvage their mission, Porter and Bryn returned with Thera, bringing news of the secure medical facility and the growing unrest in the city. We need to move quickly, Porter urged, his voice tight with urgency. The situation out there is deteriorating by the minute. Thara's eyes narrowed as she surveyed the human team's equipment. I will oversee the vaccine distribution personally, she declared, her tone brooking no argument. My people have suffered enough. I won't allow any further delays or complications. Dr. Reeves bristled at the implication. Counselor, with all due respect, we need to ensure proper protocols are followed. The vaccine's effectiveness depends on careful, scientifically guided distribution. As tensions rose between the human scientists and the Brunali leader, Porter felt a familiar tingle at the base of his skull, the same sensation he experienced when communicating with Bryn. For a moment, he thought he heard a whisper, a familiar voice calling out across the vast emptiness of space. Alex, he murmured, wondering if the stress of their situation was causing him to hallucinate. But then he saw the look of shock on Bryn's face and knew she had felt it too. Somehow, impossibly, their child was reaching out to them across the gulf between worlds. As the realization dawned on him, Porter knew that their mission had just become even more complex. With the fate of two worlds hanging in the balance, the true challenges were only beginning to reveal themselves. Porter shook his head, trying to clear the unexpected sensation. There was no time to dwell on it now. The situation demanded their full attention. We need to focus on stabilizing the vaccine, Dr. Rodriguez announced, her voice cutting through the tension. Our initial formulation isn't holding up in this environment. Dr. Reeves nodded grimly, pulling up a holographic display of the vaccine's molecular structure. The atmospheric contaminants are causing rapid degradation. We need to recalibrate. As the scientists huddled around their equipment, Porter and Bryn exchanged a meaningful glance. Their shared connection hummed with unspoken concern. I'll coordinate with local authorities to set up secure distribution points, Porter said, his military training kicking in. We need to be ready the moment the vaccine is stable. Bryn nodded, her luminescent eyes scanning the chaotic streets beyond their makeshift base. I'll work on managing the crowds. We can't risk a full-scale riot. As they moved to their tasks, Dr. Chen approached with a look of excitement. I think I've found a way to adapt our delivery system using modified Brunali tech, he explained, holding up a sleek silvery device. It should increase effectiveness and reduce adverse reactions. The team worked tirelessly through the night, their efforts illuminated by the eerie glow of Brunali technology. Porter coordinated with local security forces, establishing a network of protected medical facilities across the city. Bryn's empathic abilities proved invaluable as she calmed agitated crowds, her soothing presence a balm to the frightened Brunali. As dawn broke, casting a sickly light through the polluted sky, Dr. Rodriguez made a breakthrough. We've stabilized the vaccine, she announced, her voice hoarse from exhaustion. But there's a complication. The team gathered around as she explained. The solution requires a key component found only in the DNA of the human Brunali hybrid children on Earth. A heavy silence fell over the group as they grappled with the implications. Porter felt a familiar tingle at the base of his skull, stronger this time. He locked eyes with Bryn, seeing his own realization mirrored in her gaze. Before they could discuss this development, a commotion outside drew their attention. High Counselor Thara strode into their base, flanked by armed guards. We're moving the vaccine production to a secure government facility, she declared, her tone brooking no argument. My people have suffered enough. We'll handle distribution from here. Dr. Reeves stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. Counselor, we've only just stabilized the formula. We need time to ensure. Time is a luxury we don't have, Thera cut him off. Every moment we delay, more of my people die. As tensions rose, Porter felt a sudden, overwhelming presence in his mind. A familiar voice, impossibly clear despite the vast distance, rang out. Dad, can you hear me? Porter stumbled, steadying himself against a nearby console. Bryn was at his side in an instant, her eyes wide with shock. Alex, she whispered. Through their shared connection, Porter and Bryn saw their child, now resembling a young adult, interfacing with advanced Brunali technology back at the FCC on Earth. Somehow, Alex had established a direct communication link across the gulf of space. We've been monitoring your situation, Alex's voice echoed in their minds. We can help stabilize the vaccine, but you need to buy us time. As the implications of this unexpected development sank in, Porter straightened, his dedication hardening. He turned to face High Counselor Thara, his voice steady and authoritative. Counselor, we've just received critical information from Earth. Give us 12 hours and we'll have a stable, effective vaccine ready for mass distribution. Thara's eyes narrowed, suspicion warring with desperate hope on her face. 12 hours, she said finally. Not a minute more. As she swept out of the room, Porter turned to his team. All right, people, we've got work to do. With renewed energy, the mission team sprang into action. Dr. Rodriguez and Dr. Reeves coordinated with Alex and the other hybrid children on Earth, their combined knowledge bridging the gap between human and Brunali biology. Dr. Chen fine-tuned his delivery system, integrating the new data streaming in from the FCC. Porter and Bryn established a makeshift command center in the heart of the Brunali capital, coordinating security and managing the growing unrest. Their enhanced abilities allowed them to process vast amounts of information, anticipating and neutralizing potential threats before they could escalate. As the hours ticked by, Porter couldn't help but marvel at the incredible circumstances that had brought them to this moment. Two worlds, separated by vast distances of space, now united in a desperate race against time. And at the center of it all, the extraordinary children they had left behind on Earth, now playing a crucial role in saving an entire civilization. The vaccine production ramped up, and distribution plans were finalized. As they approached the 12-hour deadline, Porter felt a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. They were on the brink of a major breakthrough, but he knew that their challenges were not nearly finished. Just as they prepared to meet with High Counselor Thera, Bryn grabbed Porter's arm, her eyes wide with alarm. Aaron, she said urgently, I'm sensing something. A group moving towards the main production facility. Their intentions, they're not here to help. Porter's military instincts kicked into high gear. Sabotage, he muttered, already moving towards the exit. We need to secure that facility, now. As they raced through the streets of the Brunali capital, the fate of two worlds hanging in the balance, Porter knew that the true test of their mission was only beginning. Porter and Bryn sprinted through the crowded streets, their enhanced abilities allowing them to weave through the chaos with inhuman grace. As they approached the production facility, Porter's tactical mind raced, assessing potential entry points and security vulnerabilities. There, Bryn whispered, pointing to a shadowy group moving along the facility's perimeter. I can sense their hostile intent. Porter nodded, tapping his comm unit. Dr. Rodriguez, lock down the facility. We have potential saboteurs on site. As they closed in on the intruders, chaos erupted. Alarms blared, and panicked workers streamed out of the building. Porter and Bryn split up, each taking on multiple assailants with practiced efficiency. Their shared neural link allowed them to coordinate their movements flawlessly, anticipating each other's actions. In the midst of the fray, Porter caught a glimpse of a familiar face among the saboteurs. Bryn, he called out telepathically. That's Counselor Vex's aide. This goes higher than we thought. With the immediate threat neutralized, Porter and Bryn secured the facility. As they swept the premises, Dr. Rodriguez's voice crackled over the comm. We've done it, she announced, her voice thick with emotion. The vaccine is stable and ready for mass production. The news galvanized the team into action. Over the next several hours, they worked tirelessly to oversee the production and distribution of the life-saving vaccine. Porter coordinated with local security forces, establishing a network of protected medical centers across the planet. Bryn's empathic abilities proved invaluable in managing the desperate crowds, her calming presence a balm to the frightened Brunali. As the vaccine began to take effect, the transformation was nothing short of miraculous. The mottled lesions that had marked the infected Brunali began to fade, replaced by their natural silver sheen. Reports flooded in from across the planet of recovering patients, their reproductive systems showing signs of regeneration. High Counselor Thera, her earlier suspicion replaced by profound gratitude, personally oversaw the final stages of the planet-wide distribution. "Your people have saved us," she told Porter, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "We owe you a debt we can never repay." As the last batch of vaccines was administered, a palpable sense of relief washed over the planet. The immediate crisis had been averted, but Porter knew their work was far from finished. Meanwhile, on the Brunali moon, Dr. Reeves's team made a startling discovery. As they pored over the data recovered from the old Earth probe, a shocking revelation came to light. "This can't be right," Dr. Chen muttered, his eyes wide as he stared at the holographic display. The data revealed that humans and Brunali had indeed crossed paths centuries ago. This encounter, however, had been deliberately erased from both species' records by a now extinct third alien race. The implications were staggering, reshaping the understanding of both species' histories and reinforcing the importance of their current collaboration. As news of this discovery reached Earth, the UNSC convened an emergency session. After intense deliberation, they made a decision that would alter the course of human-Brunali relations forever. Permission was granted for the hybrid children to join the mission on the Brunali homeworld. Alex, now resembling a young adult, led the group as they prepared for their interstellar journey. Their unique abilities, once a source of uncertainty, were now seen as crucial for the next phase of human-Brunali relations. As the hybrid children's ship entered Brunali orbit, Porter and Bryn stood on the landing pad, a mix of emotions playing across their faces. The sight of their child, now grown and leading this unprecedented mission, filled them with pride and a touch of melancholy for the years they had missed. Alex stepped off the ship, his eyes taking in the alien landscape with a mix of wonder and familiarity. "Dad, Mom," he said, his voice carrying the weight of his unique heritage. "We're ready to help." The arrival of the hybrid children catalyzed a new era of cooperation. Alex and his siblings worked alongside Brunali scientists, their unique physiology providing insights that allowed for further refinement of the vaccine. They eliminated unexpected side effects and ensured long-term stability for the Brunali population. As the days passed, the success of the mission and the integration of the hybrid children into Brunali society led to a historic moment. High Counselor Thara, with the support of the reformed Brunali government, approached Porter and Bryn with a proposal that would change the course of both their worlds. "We wish to propose a formal alliance between Earth and the Brunali homeworld," Thara announced, her voice carrying the weight of her people's hopes. "Your actions have shown us the true potential of our species working together." As word of this proposal reached Earth, the UNSC recognized the potential benefits of this partnership. They agreed to the proposal, setting the stage for a new chapter in interstellar relations. In a ceremony broadcast across both planets, Porter and Bryn stood alongside representatives from Earth and the Brunali world. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation as they prepared to sign the Interstellar Cooperation Treaty, a document that would establish a framework for ongoing scientific collaboration, cultural exchange, and mutual defense. As Porter raised the ceremonial pen, his mind flashed back to that fateful day when 5 Brunali females crash-landed on Earth. What had begun as a potential crisis had transformed into an unprecedented opportunity for both species. He glanced at Bryn, seeing in her eyes the same sense of wonder and hope that he felt. With a steady hand, he signed his name, the first stroke of the pen marking the beginning of a new era for humanity and the Brunali alike.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.